Want to talk about this post from Elon Musk, this reply to one of my posts on X. This is a very, very, very big deal, and I want to talk about why that is in this video. I posed a question to Elon Musk yesterday, and I asked this question specifically about teleoperators in the Robotaxi network. My question was when he thought Tesla would reach a point where the number of robotaxis, so self-driving cars on the road, that will be operating in a self-driving network, when he thinks there will be more than 3 robotaxis per teleoperator or per some sort of supervisor at the headquarters. And then he gave guidance on that, saying that he thinks in the next month or 2, but it's heavily depending on safety and on data. So for people that don't follow this story closely, this probably sounds very esoteric and just basically what the hell does this mean? For the people that follow this story closely, their ears and their eyes probably perked up and they got really big, because this is the key thing that's going to allow Tesla to reach massive amounts of profitability with the Robotaxi network as long as the software works. So let me walk you through why this is. So in self-driving world right now, your Waymos, your Zooks, your Teslas now, they have self-driving cars on the road. Tesla has a very small area in Austin, in South Austin. It's about, 5 square miles, something like that, if that. It might be even 4 square miles. But they have an area where they have self-driving cars operating. Today I'm going to go down and test Waymo in Austin. So Waymo has something like 150 to 250 cars in Austin. They have a much bigger area, and they're operating. Zoox, I think, has like 10 of them, and they're very, very small. But all those companies use teleoperators. They use people in their headquarters in some sort of room somewhere to oversee the operations of the self-driving vehicles, to make sure they're not getting into accidents, to make sure they're not getting into any weird spots. If they get into a weird spot, somebody's there to get the car unstuck. They're there just to monitor the situation, oversee things, etc., etc. Each one of those people costs money, right? You have to pay people to work that job. And so instead of having a person in a car, right, like say an Uber driver driving an Uber around, these self-driving companies have teleoperators or supervisors at the headquarters making sure that the cars are operating properly. It's hard to know what kind of ratio a lot of these companies have. They're not very public about it. I've seen estimates out there that Waymo has like 1 person per car. I've seen other estimates that they have 2 people or 2 cars per person. Very hard to know what that number is. And today Tesla has basically, probably they have 2 people per car. They have 1 safety rider in the car, and they probably have another person at the headquarters. I think they have like 13 cars out and about, but they have more than 1 person overseeing the operations. And that's understandable because they just launched the service. And so if we do a little bit of quick math, and I'll get into a lot more detail in later videos as I sort of build my model and I go through all the detail, each one of these people that teleoperates probably gets paid somewhere upwards, and I'm just a guess here. I did try to do some research yesterday, sort of roundabout number of $100,000 per year that each teleoperator gets paid. And so you think about their wage, you think about their benefits, insurance, maternity leave, paternity leave, HR support, training, etc., right? A self-driving car is going to operate more than a shift of each one of these people, right? So if we take Tesla's example, where they operate from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m., so they have basically a 18-hour window of operation, right? 6 hours of downtime, 18 hours of operation, that's 24 hours in a day. You're going to need at least 2 people to work a shift to ensure that the time where the robotaxi is out there working, there's somebody supervising. And so you can very quickly see that if you're going to have a lot of these supervisors overseeing the cars, the self-driving cars driving around, the cost for operating the self-driving network becomes very expensive, because you're essentially shifting a driver's pay, which would be, if you take Uber as an example, somewhere between 20 to 40 bucks an hour, depending on how much time the person stays on the road and when they drive, etc., etc. You're essentially shifting that hourly rate over to the headquarters with these supervisors. And so you lose the advantage of a self-driving car, which is that you don't have a driver anymore, so you're not paying for somebody's time. But if you get to a point where the ratio of cars to supervisors starts to get bigger. So instead of having, say, one supervisor per robotaxi out there, you have 3 robotaxis per supervisor, or 5 robotaxis per supervisor, or 10, or 100, or 1,000, right? That's when the math, the numbers, start to favor self-driving cars dramatically. And the reason why is because you're no longer paying for the most expensive part of transportation right now, which is the driver's time. Even in a situation where you're paying really high rates of insurance and liability for operating a self-driving car. So I try to do some research, and it looks like Waymo, this number's probably way wrong, but it's not public, it's very hard to estimate, and I'm trying to come up with a good number, but I'm assuming that Waymo's paying something like $1,400 a month for insuring each one of their Waymo vehicles. I saw a number out there that they're paying $25 million a year for liability and insurance and all that stuff per year, and they have a fleet of 1,500 cars. To divide that, it's about $1,400 a month, something like that. And then if you compare that to, like, say, I don't know, like tractor trailers, 18-wheelers, or commercial vehicles that are driving people around, I'm seeing numbers like $600 a month, $300 a month. I'm like, okay, that's probably low because these self-driving cars are new technology. If they get into an accident and there's an injury or death, you damn well know they're gonna go sued to hell, and the company is gonna be forced to pay a ton of money, especially if you're like a Google or even a Tesla, where you have a bunch of money. The people suing you are gonna be like, yo, you just, cause injury or God forbid death. You need to pay me a bunch of money because you can afford it. You've inflicted a ton of damage to me, right? And they would have every right to do that, and they should do that, because the liability is on the company to provide a safe service, not the individual. But even there, even if you're paying a ton of insurance, by far, the highest portion of cost for operating a self-driving vehicle is going to be the teleoperators. It's going to be the supervisors at the headquarters and the ratio of cars to those teleoperators. Now, the reason why this is such a big deal for Tesla, this whole ratio of robotaxis to teleoperators, is that Tesla is the only company out of Waymo, Zoox, Tesla, Pony, just go down the list of all these self-driving cars, a bunch of Chinese companies out there. They're the only ones that have the scale to manufacture hundreds of thousands, if not millions of units per year of these self-driving vehicles. And that's because the approach they've taken with their AI intelligence, where they use the cameras and the computer on board, and they have a training computer at the headquarters, the cost per unit of sensors for each car is about $2,000, whereas for Waymo, it's upwards of $60,000, $100,000, whatever it may be. All these competitors pay a lot more per driving unit, per unit of transportation, to have a self-driving vehicle. Whereas Tesla can just spit one out for $30,000, $35,000 all in, using this Model Y. Last year, Tesla sold 1.2 million Model Ys, and Waymo is looking to build about 2,000 next year, as an example. And we just saw Tesla made their first delivery of a Model Y fully autonomously. So it drove itself with nobody in the car from the factory to the person's house in Austin. It took the highways, it took the local roads, it navigated through the factory parking lot, it navigated to the person's apartment's parking lot. It did the whole drive on its own, and that same car is the car that's going to be operating as a robotaxi, as a self-driving car. And so Tesla has the manufacturing capacity to literally dump 1 million robotaxis into the world per year, 1.2 million right now, at least in jurisdictions that would allow it. But that only becomes economical, that only becomes profitable if those cars can operate without anybody, no supervisor, no teleoperator intervening in those vehicles, right? Or at least keeping it at a very minimal situation where, let's say you have 1,000 robotaxis out there, you only need maybe like 10 or 50 or 100 or even 200 supervisors or teleoperators looking after that 1,000-car fleet. Tesla is the only one in the position to be able to reach that from a fleet perspective, from a manufacturing perspective, and also from a technology perspective. Tesla's making 1.2 million cars per year, but how are they making sure that there won't need to be a lot of interventions, that there won't need to be a lot of supervising or teleoperation. That is purely dependent on their ability to train the car to drive itself. And the way they're training the cars is by using a training cluster in their headquarters. Basically, what ChatGPT uses to train ChatGPT, but they're doing that for the cars, and it's heavily dependent on how many chips they have. There's this concept in AI called the bitter lesson. It's this concept that says that the only way that we know of right now to make the artificial intelligence smarter is not by necessarily trying to get very good at using the chips that you have. Some of it, yes. But the thing that drives the biggest impact by far is just raw horsepower. How many chips do you have to train the AI? It just purely becomes a game of how much money do you have to buy chips and how many chips do you have to train the thing you're trying to train. And this is exactly what Tesla has been doing up to now and moving forward, is that they're gobbling up as many chips, and so is everybody else, honestly. Tesla's not unique in this. But all the other AI companies, that's exactly what they're doing. They're just going all in buying as many chips as possible so that they can start getting the benefits of training that artificial intelligence so that they can become very good at doing the thing they want them to do, right? In Tesla's case, Tesla's building Cortex-2, which is this massive training cluster at the Giga Texas headquarters here, where they're gonna dump hundreds of thousands of GPUs all working together to train the models on how to drive a car even better. That training directly correlates to the safety and the car's ability to operate on its own without anybody intervening or supervising. A good way to think about this is that Tesla, for the last, I don't know, since inception really, since they started making cars in 2008, whenever that was, when the first Roadster came out. From 2008 to 2025, Tesla has spent all their money and all their time, most of it, in building out a supply chain, meaning the batteries and the factories and the raw materials and the whole shebang to make millions of cars per year that can drive themselves. That's been their work up to now. But in the last 3-4 years, Tesla has shifted some of the attention of the company to build as many training clusters in AI capability as possible so that the cars that they're cranking out can drive themselves in almost all situations with little to no supervision. And that little to no supervision is what's going to allow that massive fleet of cars to have a very high ratio of robotaxis to supervisors so that the service can actually be profitable. So it can actually make money. So it can be something that's viable, that's not just like, unfortunately, like Waymo is right now, where their ratio of cars to supervisors is quite high, or is quite low rather. They have too many people overseeing the cars. Not to mention, they don't own the means of production. They have to buy the cars they were used to buying from Jaguar, then Jaguar discontinued the I-Pace, and now they have to find a new supplier who's a Chinese auto manufacturer, and then they have to outfit them with these expensive sensors like LiDAR and ultrasonics, et cetera, even though they're moving towards a vision-only model, which is what Tesla has now and has had for years now. They're limited to only being able to make a few thousand units per year, and they're behind the technology curve because up to this point, they've been using LiDAR, ultrasonics, et cetera. That technology doesn't allow Waymo to be nearly as smart in the real world as Tesla would be, which would require a lot of interventions and or supervision. And that can be seen perfectly in one of the videos that I posted recently, where myself and my brother, we went to Terry Black's, which is a barbecue joint in downtown Austin. We took a Robotaxi to Terry Black's. The Robotaxi put us right into the parking lot. But the Waymos that were dropping and picking people off at Terry Black's were stopping in the middle of the road and causing massive amounts of traffic and, frankly, unsafe situations for everybody involved, pedestrians and people driving their cars. It was creating a bunch of blind spots. It was creating a backup. It was creating a situation where if you wanted to come out of the parking lot, you would have a car blocking your vantage point. It was honestly a mess. But the reason why that happens is because the Waymo is not smart enough to figure out that that's a parking lot and it should go in there. Somebody has to essentially hard code that thing for every single situation that the Waymo encounters. okay? And that directly correlates to supervisors and teleoperators. And so with Elon's guidance, let's be clear, Elon is fundamentally way too optimistic when it comes to this stuff. Although as of late, he has been either on time or early, which is weird. They said they were going to launch a Robotaxi on June 22nd. They launched it on June 22nd. They said they were going to do the first delivery from factory to someone's house completely autonomously with a Model Y on the 28th. They did it on the 27th, okay? And the Robotaxi network, they're already expanding the pool of people that can hail the Robotaxi in downtown Austin, right? And so that one would think the next steps would be either making the geofence bigger or removing the safety rider or both, right? And so Tesla has now started to sort of make this flywheel go. And what's even more interesting is, if you think about the surrounding stuff around the Robotaxi network, set aside the teleoperators, which are by far the most expensive part of the puzzle. If you think about charging, if you think about cleaning, et cetera, Tesla already has this massive organization that's generating $80 to $100 billion of revenue every year and is cash flow positive, meaning that it's generating cash and it has $35 billion in the bank and it has little to no debt. They have so much money to build out the charging and cleaning infrastructures that are necessary for operating this Robotaxi network. And the money that goes into that process is significantly lower, significantly lower than building out a service center infrastructure for their existing vehicles, which they have already. And a lot of those locations could double, potentially, as a place for these Robotaxis to charge, or as a place for the Robotaxis to get cleaned, right? Because these service centers already have a process, when you drop off your car and you get it serviced, oftentimes they vacuum the floors for you. Sometimes, not always, but they vacuum the floors for you, and they also have if they're a delivery center, a place to clean the cars, right? So that same exact place can be used to maintain these Robotaxis. So a lot of the money necessary for the surrounding infrastructure is already into the business. So Tesla doesn't have to spend additional money, which again lowers the cost of entrance for Tesla to build out a Robotaxi network. And they already have their own app as well. And they have their own insurance, okay? So a lot more detail to come. I say this a lot, but this is a really big deal. This is a really, really big deal. And we'll have to see how accurate Elon is in his assumptions, in his prediction, that Tesla can go to a ratio of 3-to-1 Robotaxis to supervisors or more starting in the next couple months. By default, what that means is that Tesla is going to expand its fleet. It's going to go from 13 cars to 20 cars to 50 cars to 100 cars to 1,000 cars, whatever that number is. And as that happens, I'm really curious to see if Tesla's going to start showing that in the financials. And their sort of P&L, the profit and loss. Every quarter, Tesla has to report how much money they've made and how much money they have in the bank, et cetera, et cetera. So if that becomes true, then we should start seeing it in the financials. And if we start seeing it in the financials, and Tesla has 3 Robotaxis per supervisor or 5 Robotaxis per supervisor, then the amount of money that Tesla's going to be able to make per vehicle is going to be astronomical. Especially if it start getting into the 10-to-1 or 20-to-1 or 100-to-1. It just becomes unbelievably fruitful for the company and for investors. Not investment and financial advice, but the math is pretty obvious and clear once you sit down and sort of walk through what are the costs associated to this thing and what's the revenue that this Robotaxi network can generate using existing data out there already in the market from companies like Uber and Waymo, et cetera, et cetera. So that's to come. If you want to see more about that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And the model I'm probably going to make available only to my subscribers, so the folks that are actually members of the channel. So if you are interested in that, become a member. And then I'm going to start doing weekly live streams here in the next couple weeks, probably on Wednesdays. I still haven't finalized the day. I want to re-engage my community. I've been MIA with my community for a long time. We had a kid. He's a year and a month now, and it's just been super fun but super busy to become a father and being a husband to a mother, right? So it's like all this stuff is very, very complex and difficult. But I think I'm at the point now where I can re-engage my community the way that y'all deserve to be engaged, okay? So if you're interested in that, become a member. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Love you guys very much. Very big deal. Driving to Austin right now. I'm meeting with Joe Tegmeyer to test some Waymos. and I'll bring that footage for you guys as well. Y'all. I'm from Texas now, I gotta say y'all. All right, bye everybody. Oh, by the way, this has been on FSU the whole time, this Cybertruck. Bye-bye.